On June 4, 2004, the afternoon sky over Granby, Colorado was clear. People were going about their day. Kids in the library for story hour, employees at the concrete plant screening topsoil, a woman working in the corner office of the local bank. Then the ground began to shake. Not an earthquake. Something slower, heavier, inevitable. A machine that shouldn't exist rolled out of a shed. 61 tons of welded steel, concrete, and cold intent. Cameras for eyes, gun ports for teeth. Inside was one man who believed the town had taken everything from him.
It started just after 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon in the town of Granby.
This is when we first arrived on scene, and it looked like officers were firing some pretty heavy arms at him.
The sheriff in Granby says that Marvin Heemeyer was behind the wheel during a 90-minute rampage in that fortified bulldozer.
They do not know what reason is. Reason to them is doing it their way.
This man owned a business next to the concrete company, that he had a long-standing beef with the concrete company in Granby.
This is a dispute that dates back 3 years ago. Damage, we're told, could be in the millions. They'll have a better assessment of that later on today.
You had to take me on en masse. Well, I'm going to take you on by myself.
For 2 hours and 7 minutes, Marvin Heemeyer turned a bulldozer into a weapon of singular destruction. He leveled buildings. He fired on law enforcement. He carved a path of ruin through the heart of Granby. And remarkably, no one else died. This is the story of how one man's obsession with justice became something far darker. How a small-town dispute escalated into one of the most surreal acts of domestic defiance in modern American history. But before we dive in, some of the details in this story are disturbing and may not be suitable for all audiences, so viewer discretion is strongly advised. As always, remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to stay up to date with the channel. Alright, let's dive into the video. Marvin Heemeyer was born on October 28, 1951, on a dairy farm in Castlewood, South Dakota. He grew up working with machinery alongside his father. He enlisted in the United States Air Force in the early 1970s, spending time stationed in Colorado, the landscape that would later define his life. After his service, he built a successful chain of muffler shops in the Denver area. By the early 1990s, he was drawn back to the mountains. He wanted the quiet life, snowmobiling with friends, independence. A handshake deal meant something. In 1992, Marvin Heemeyer bought 2 acres of land outside Granby from the Resolution Trust Corporation for about $42,000. He planned to build a muffler shop, Mountain View Muffler. It seemed straightforward, a self-made man carving out his piece of the American West. But in small towns, land isn't just dirt, it's leverage, it's relationships, it's power. And Marvin Heemeyer was about to learn how quickly those relationships could turn. Let's rewind to the late 1990s. Marvin Heemeyer had his shop running. Business was steady. Then the Doshef family, owners of Mountain Park Concrete, expressed interest in nearby land for a concrete batch plant. Initially, Marvin agreed to sell his 2 acres for $250,000. A deal was struck. Or so it seemed. According to accounts, Marvin later raised his asking price to $375,000 and at one point reportedly closer to $1 million. The deal fell through. The town eventually rezoned the adjacent property, allowing the concrete plant to move forward. Marvin saw this as a direct attack on his livelihood. Dust, noise, traffic. He argued it would ruin his muffler shop. He claimed the rezoning was illegal or corrupt, that the town council was in bed with the Doshefs. He wasn't entirely alone in his frustration. Small-town politics can feel insular, favors get traded, but investigations later found no concrete evidence of outright bribery or conspiracy, just the grinding machinery of the local government. Marvin fought back the only ways he knew how. He filed lawsuits. He showed up at town meetings. He wrote letters. He installed a septic system workaround. An old concrete mixer truck sunk into the ground after disputes over permits. Fines piled up. He wrote cowards on one check to the city. To Marvin, this wasn't just about zoning, it was personal. He believed the system, judges, council members, neighbors, the local newspaper, had conspired to squeeze him out, an outsider who wouldn't play the game. I was always willing to be reasonable until I had to be unreasonable. He recorded hours of audio in the months leading up to his final act. Cassette tapes where he lays out his grievances in a calm, almost methodical voice. He states his social security number as if documenting evidence for posterity. He talks about God blessing him for the task ahead. He names names. He calls the douche F on his hit list. These tapes are chilling not because they're ranting and unhinged, but because they're so composed. A man at peace with what he sees as inevitable. By 2001 to 2002, the legal battles were lost. Appeals exhausted. Marvin had already purchased a Komatsu bulldozer at auction in California for around $16,000. His original plan? Use it to build an access road to his shop after the concrete plant blocked his preferred route. That plan changed.
He built a 49-ton armored tank and leveled an entire town. This is the story of Marvin Heemeyer and the infamous Killdozer.
Imagine a standard Komatsu crawler tractor, 49 tons, 410 horsepower, a beast built for moving earth, not people. Marvin took it further. Over roughly 18 months working alone in a shed attached to his muffler shop, he transformed it into something the world would later call the Killdozer, or, as he referred to it on tape, Marv's Komatsu tank, MK Tank.0. He welded layers of steel plate, half-inch tool steel, with concrete poured between them. Composite armor, makeshift but brutally effective. In places, the protection exceeded a foot thick. The engine, cabin, hydraulics, even parts of the tracks were shielded. It was not bulletproof in the military sense, but against small arms fire, armor-piercing rounds, and even grenades, it held. Over 200 rounds would bounce off during the Rampage. Explosives barely scratched it. He installed 3 video cameras mounted externally, protected by 3-inch bulletproof polycarbonate. These fed into monitors inside the cab, giving him a 360-degree view. Compressed air nozzles to clear dust and debris from the lenses. An air filtration system. Air conditioning. Food. Water. A small fan. Weapons ports were cut precisely. He mounted a 50 caliber Barrett M82 sniper rifle at the rear, an FNFNC 5.56mm assault rifle at the front, a Ruger Mini 14.223 on the side. Handguns for backup, 357 Magnum and a 9mm Kel-Tec. He could fire without exposing himself. The entire machine weighed up to 61 tons once armored. Mobility suffered, but at 5 to 7 miles per hour through town, speed wasn't the point. Inevitability was. He greased the exterior to make climbing difficult. He sealed himself inside by lowering the final armored panels and bolting them from within. There was no easy way out. This was a one-way commitment. Think about the psychology of this build. Alone for months. Welding in secret. Testing armor. Knowing neighbors might hear but hoping the shed muffled the work. A man turning his frustration into steel and concrete. He left plans on his computer. A handwritten list of over 100 targets. People and buildings he felt had wronged him. The dough chefs at the top. Town hall. The newspaper. A former mayor's home. The bank. Even the library. This wasn't random rage, it was engineered, calculated. And on the morning of June 4th, 2004, Marvin Heemeyer climbed inside, fired up the engine, and drove straight through the wall of his own shed.
You have given me license, through your example, to do what I need to do. When I do this, that levels the playing field in my favor. So now we've got a lopsided playing field. Because when I come back at you, I'm going to destroy your side of the playing field. I'm going to destroy you.
It started around 2:15 to 3 p.m. The first target was predictable. the Mountain Park concrete plant. Employees heard the roar before they saw it. The armored monstrosity burst into view, smashing through structures. Cody Dochef, at the gravel pit, got a radio call about an explosion at the precast shop. He raced over in a front-end loader, thinking perhaps remote control or some prank gone wrong. He fired his pistol at the dozer. Useless. Employees tried jamming objects into the treads. No effect. Dochef attempted to ram it with his loader. Marvin responded by charging and firing multiple rounds from inside the cab. Dochef barely escaped. Sheriff's deputies arrived, then state troopers. They opened fire. Hundreds of rounds. They targeted the cameras. The bulletproof shields held. One trooper was fired upon directly. Marvin turned onto Agate Avenue, heading into town at a deliberate crawl. 5 miles per hour. Enough time for panic to spread. Enough time for people to flee. He hit the Granby Town Hall next, the building that had hosted the zoning decisions. Inside, the library was in the middle of story hour for children. Staff evacuated kids just in time as the dozer plowed through walls, collapsing sections. Gas lines were ruptured. Chaos. From there, the path became methodical. The Liberty Savings Bank, targeting the corner office of a zoning board member. A hardware store. The local newspaper office where editor Patrick Brower had covered the disputes fairly. In Marvin's view, not fairly enough. The home of a former mayor. Other businesses linked to those on his list. 13 buildings in total. Millions in damage. Estimates around $7 million. Vehicles crushed. Trees toppled. The dozer left a trail of twisted metal and rubble. Law enforcement was powerless in the moment. Rifles, pistols, even attempts with heavier rounds. Nothing penetrated. They tried to disable the cameras. Failed. At one point, Marvin charged a group of troopers who evacuated seconds before he demolished their position. One witness said a moment longer, and they would have been killed. He fired the .50 caliber at officers. He attempted to hit propane tanks, perhaps seeking a larger explosion. The machine was slow, but relentless, like a force of nature that had learned to hate. For 2 hours and 7 minutes, Granby was under siege by a single man in a homemade tank. The governor reportedly considered calling in the National Guard, Apache helicopters, anti-tank missiles. But the rampage ended before that became necessary. Eventually, the Killdozer became stuck in the basement level of a hardware store it was demolishing. Debris piled up. The treads lost purchase. The machine that had seemed unstoppable stopped. Inside, Marvin Heemeyer had one final act. He turned one of his handguns on himself. A single shot to the head. When authorities finally cut through the armor hours later, using torches and heavy equipment in the early morning of June 5th, they found his body. No dramatic last stand against police. Just silence. No one else was killed. Injured? Yes. Traumatized? Absolutely. But the body count remained one. Some call it a miracle. Others point out that Marvin Heemeyer's slow pace and the town's quick evacuations played a role. He wasn't trying to maximize civilian deaths, he was targeting symbols of his perceived oppression. The aftermath was clinical. The dozer was dismantled piece by piece. Parts were scattered and destroyed to prevent it becoming a shrine. Marvin's property was searched. The tapes were found. The target list. Plans. Granby began to rebuild. The town hall was repaired. Businesses reopened. Life moved on, as small towns do. But the legend didn't. In the years since, Marvin Heemeyer has become a folk hero to some. Killdozer Day, on June 4th. Memes, t-shirts, songs. Anti-government circles hail him as a man who fought back against a corrupt system. Sometimes reasonable men must do unreasonable things. Patriots see a lone wolf standing against bureaucracy. Preppers admire the engineering. Conspiracy communities amplify the narrative of a town out to get him, ignoring the complexities, like his own shifting land deal demands or the lack of proven corruption. Others call it domestic terrorism, a man who let grievances consume him, endangering innocents, destroying livelihoods, all because he lost in court, and in the court of local opinion. Patrick Brower, the newspaper editor who wrote a book on the event, has pushed back hard against the mythologizing. He knew Marvin. He argues the man invented a conspiracy to justify his rage. 56. The truth, as always, is murkier.
But the real root of his anger was that he couldn't sell the property that he had, that he'd bought at auction in 1992. He couldn't sell it at really inflated prices to his neighbors, so ultimately he threatened them. He said, if you don't buy it at this price, I'm just going to fight you all the way through the town process, and he did.
Marvin was wronged in some ways. Small-town politics can be petty and stacked. Zoning decisions do favor the connected, but he also escalated, refused compromise, turned inward, built a tomb on wheels. His tapes reveal a man who saw himself as divinely guided, at peace. A doomsday prepper mindset colliding with real-world slights. Today, the story resonates because it taps into something primal, the fear that the system doesn't care about the little guy, that one day the quiet man in the shop will stop filing complaints and start welding armor. Granby still stands, the mountains don't care, the machinery of daily life grinds on. But every so often, on quiet afternoons, some locals say they can still hear it, the low rumble of something heavy moving through town. Slow, deliberate, unforgiving. What would you do if you believed everything was taken from you? How far would you go before reasonable stopped working? Marvin Heemeyer crossed that line with 61 tons of steel and concrete. He left a crater in a small town and a question mark in our collective imagination. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, then check out these videos on the screen now. If you have a topic suggestion, please send it to the email in the description. And as always, remember to like, comment, share the video, and subscribe to our channel. And remember, the only thing stranger than this story is missing out on our next video.